Have you ever noticed how some women slowly stop expressing what they feel? At first, they used to openly share what bothers them. They explain what hurts them. They communicate what they need. But slowly, something begins changing. They stop explaining. They stop reacting the way they used to. They begin saying, "It's fine," even when it clearly isn't. And over time, they become emotionally quieter. But here is the strange part. This silence usually doesn't happen suddenly. It is built slowly. And once you understand why, you begin realizing that emotional silence often says far more than words ever could. So welcome to the channel, and today we are going underneath about one of the common emotional roller coaster a woman might go through in her life. One of the first changes begins here: repetition. When someone keeps expressing what bothers them, but feels misunderstood again and again, something begins happening internally. The mind starts asking a simple question: why keep explaining if nothing changes? And slowly, what was once spoken openly starts remaining unspoken, not because feelings disappeared, but because repeating emotional pain becomes exhausting. But over time, something even deeper begins happening. Human beings naturally express emotions because deep inside, we believe expression creates understanding. But when repeated emotional expression leads nowhere, the brain quietly learns something dangerous. Speaking changes nothing, and once that belief begins forming, communication slowly decreases, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because emotional effort stops feeling useful. Sometimes, the most dangerous words are the simplest ones: "I'm fine." Most people hear these words casually, but psychologically, those words can mean something very different. It can mean, "I no longer have the energy to explain what I feel. I no longer expect emotional understanding, and I no longer want to expose vulnerability, only to feel unheard again." Sometimes, "I'm fine" doesn't mean peace. It means withdrawal has already begun. This is where people misunderstand silence. When emotional expression stops, most assume feelings disappeared. But usually, the opposite is happening. The frustration remains. The sadness remains. The disappointment remains. But instead of being spoken externally, everything begins moving inward. Interestingly, psychologists studying emotional suppression, including research associated with Stanford University, found that when people repeatedly stop expressing emotions outwardly, the emotions themselves often remain fully active internally. The outside becomes calm, but internally, nothing is calm. Once emotions stop being expressed outwardly, the mind begins doing something else: replaying. Conversations begin repeating inside the head. Past moments get analyzed repeatedly. Small details begin carrying more emotional weight. Words spoken days ago keep returning mentally, and slowly, the person begins carrying emotional weight privately, without anyone noticing. What makes this even more interesting is that psychological studies on thought suppression, including work connected to Harvard researcher Daniel Wegner, found that suppressing thoughts or emotions rarely makes them disappear. In many cases, the mind keeps processing them even more intensely. Not because emotions became stronger, but because expression was replaced by internal processing. And over time, the human mind begins adapting, because the brain is always learning patterns. And when emotional vulnerability repeatedly feels uncomfortable, protection begins developing, invisible walls. Slowly, people begin becoming more careful about what they reveal emotionally. They stop sharing personal struggles. They stop speaking openly about what affects them deeply. They begin protecting their inner world. Not because trust vanished overnight, but because emotional openness no longer feels safe, and once those walls begin forming, breaking them becomes difficult. Sometimes people notice something strange. The reactions begin changing. Things that once triggered emotional responses suddenly don't. The person stops arguing, stops reacting strongly, stops explaining disappointment, and from the outside, this often looks like maturity or calmness, but psychologically, something deeper may be happening. Sometimes reduced reaction doesn't mean emotional stability. Sometimes it means emotional exhaustion. The energy to react simply exists no longer. And eventually, another important shift begins appearing. The person stops asking for emotional support altogether. This is one of the most overlooked changes. Normally, when people feel emotionally overwhelmed, they seek comfort. They reach out. They look for understanding. But after repeated disappointment, many stop doing this entirely. The mind quietly decides something. Handle everything alone. And once this shift happens, people may continue struggling emotionally, while appearing completely normal externally. The need for support remains, but the willingness to ask for it disappears. This creates one of the biggest psychological misunderstandings. People often see emotional silence and assume one thing: they no longer care. They moved on. Nothing affects them anymore. But silence can be deceptive. Studies on emotional expression have consistently shown that women, on average, tend to express emotions more openly in everyday life, which makes emotional withdrawal psychologically meaningful when that expression begins fading over time. The feelings remain alive. The attachment remains alive. The emotional pain remains alive. Only the expression disappeared, and people confuse silence with emotional absence. But those two things are not the same. But perhaps the frightening part about emotional withdrawal is how invisible it becomes. From the outside, everything may look normal. The person smiles normally, talks normally, functions normally, but internally, something important has changed. The willingness to emotionally open up has begun fading, and the dangerous part is this often happens so gradually that nobody notices when it begins, not even the person experiencing it. Human behavior is rarely simple. Sometimes silence is not peace. Sometimes being quiet is not emotional strength. And sometimes, the emotions people stop expressing are the emotions affecting them the most. Because not every damage creates visible pain, and not every feeling needs words to exist deeply. Sometimes, understanding people begins by noticing what they slowly stop saying, because silence has its own psychology. And perhaps sometimes, understanding people is nothing about listening to what they say, but learning to notice what they have stopped saying, because often, the loudest struggles in a person's mind are the ones that never become words. I know we jokingly say it's hard to understand women, but we have to understand women. That makes us whole as a man. Human behavior often reveals only the surface. Understanding psychology may give you insights on how you see people, how you see the world around you. Here, we look deeper into the psychology shaping what people think, feel, and become. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.